Welcome back to this new inspirational video. Today I wanted to go over a chapter titled The Nature of Thought, which was written by Besant over 100 years ago in the early 1900s. So let's begin. The nature of thought may be studied from two standpoints. From the side of consciousness, which is knowledge, or from the side of the form by which knowledge is obtained. The susceptibility of which to modifications makes possible the attainment of knowledge. This possibility has led to the two extremes in philosophy, both of which we must avoid, because each ignores one side of manifested life. One regards everything as consciousness, ignoring the essentiality of form as conditioning consciousness, as making it possible. The other regards everything as form, ignoring the fact that form can only exist by virtue of the life ensouling it. The form and the life, the matter and the spirit, the vehicle and the consciousness are inseparable in manifestation, and are the indivisible aspects of that in which we both inhere, that which is neither consciousness nor its vehicle, but the root of both. A philosophy which tries to explain everything by the forms, ignoring the life, will find problems it is utterly unable to solve. A philosophy which tries to explain everything by the life, ignoring the forms, will find itself faced by dead walls, which it cannot surmount. The final word on this is that consciousness and its vehicles, life and form, spirit and matter, are the temporary expressions of the two aspects of the one unconditioned existence, which is not known save when manifested as the root spirit. The abstract being, the abstract logos, whence all individual selves, and the root matter, whence all forms. Whenever manifestation takes place, this root spirit gives birth to a triple consciousness, and this root matter to a triple matter. Beneath these is the one reality, forever incognizable by the conditioned consciousness. The flower sees not the root whence it grows, though all its life is drawn from it, and without it it could not be. The self as knower has as his characteristic function the mirroring within himself of the not-self. As a sensitive plate perceives rays of light reflected from objects, and those rays cause modifications in the material on which they fall, so that images of the objects can be obtained, so it is with the self in the aspect of knowledge to watch everything external. His vehicle is a sphere whereon the self receives from the not-self the reflected rays of the one-self, causing to appear on the surface of this sphere images which are the reflection of that which is not himself. The knower does not know the things themselves in the earlier stages of his consciousness. He knows only the images produced in his vehicle by the actions of the not-self on his responsive casing, the photographs of the external world. Hence the mind, the vehicle of the self as knower, has been compared to a mirror, in which are seen the images of all objects placed before it. We do not know the things themselves, but only the effect produced by them in our consciousness. Not the objects, but the images of the objects are what we find in the mind. As the mirror seems to have the objects within it, but those apparent objects are only images, illusions caused by the rays of light reflected from the objects, not the objects themselves. So does the mind, in its knowledge of the outer universe, know only the elusive images and not the things in themselves. These images made in the vehicle are perceived as objects by the knower, and this perception consists in his reproduction of them in himself. Now the analogy of the mirror and the use of the word reflection in the preceding paragraph are a little misleading, for the mental image is a reproduction, not a reflection, of the object which causes it. The matter of the mind is actually shaped into a likeness of the object presented to it, and this likeness in its turn is reproduced by the knower. When he thus modifies himself into the likeness of an external object, he is said to know that object, but in that case we are considering that which he knows as only the image produced by the object in his vehicle and not the object itself. And this image is not a perfect reproduction of the object, for a reason we shall see in the next chapter. But it may be said, will that be so ever? shall we never know the things in themselves? This brings us to the vital distinction between the consciousness and the matter in which the consciousness is working, and by this we may find an answer to that natural question of the human mind. When consciousness by long evolution has developed the power to reproduce within itself all that exists outside it, then the envelope of matter in which it has been working falls away, and the consciousness that is knowledge identifies itself with all the selves amid which it has been evolving, and sees as the not self only the matter connected alike with all selves severally. That is, the day be with us, the union which is the triumph of evolution, when consciousness knows itself and knows others as itself. By sameness of nature, perfect knowledge is attained, and the self realizes that marvelous state where identity perishes not, and memory is not lost, but where separation finds its ending, and knower and knowing and knowledge are one. It is this wondrous nature of this self who is evolving in us through knowledge at the present time that we have to study in order to understand the nature of thought, and it is necessary to see clearly the illusory side in order that we may utilize the illusion to transcend it. So let us now study how knowing, the relation between the knower and the known, is established, and this will lead us to see more clearly into the nature of thought. The chain of knower, knowing and known. There is one word, vibration, which is becoming more and more the keynote of Western science, as it has long been that of all the science of the East. Motion is the root of all life. Life is motion. Consciousness is motion. And that motion affecting matter is vibration. The one, the all, we think of as changeless, either as absolute motion or as motionless, since in one relative motion cannot be. Only when there is differentiation or parts can we think of what we call motion, which is change of place in succession of time. When the one becomes the many, then motion arises. It is health, consciousness, life. When rhythmic, regular, as it is disease, unconsciousness, death. When without rhythm, irregular. For life and death are twin sisters, alike born of motion, which is manifestation. Motion must needs appear when the one becomes the many, since when the omnipresent appears as separate particles, infinite motion must represent omnipresence, or otherwise put, must be its reflection or image in the matter. The essence of matter is separateness, as that of spirit is unity, and when the two appear in the one, as cream in milk, the reflection of omnipresence of that one in the multiplicity of matter is ceaseless and infinite motion. Absolute motion, the presence of every moving unit at every point of space at every moment of time, is identical with rest, being only rest looked at in another way, from the standpoint of matter instead of from that of spirit. From the standpoint of spirit there is always one, from that of matter there is always many. This infinite motion appears as rhythmical movements, vibrations, in the matter which manifests it, each jiva, or separated unit of consciousness, being isolated by an enclosing wall of matter from all other jivas. Now what about that word jiva? The author gave an explanation. There is no convenient English word for a separated unit of consciousness, spirit and soul, connotating various peculiarities in different schools of thought. I shall therefore venture to use the name jiva instead of the clumsy, a separate unit of consciousness. So if we go on, she stated, each jiva further becomes embodied or clothed in several garments of matter. As these garments of matter vibrate, they communicate their vibrations to the matter surrounding them, such matter becoming the medium wherein the vibrations are carried outwards, and this medium in turn communicates the impulse of vibration to the enclosing garments of another jiva, and thus sets the jiva vibrating like the first. In this series of vibrations, beginning in one jiva, made in the body that encircles it, sent on by the body to the medium around it, communicated by that to another body. And from that second body to the jiva encircled by it, we have the chain of vibrations whereby one knows another. The second knows the first because he reproduces the first in himself, and thus experiences as he experiences. And yet with a difference, for our second jiva is already in vibratory condition, and his state of motion after receiving the impulse from the first is not a simple repetition of that impulse, but a combination of his own original motion with that imposed on him from without, and hence is not a perfect reproduction. Similarities are obtained ever closer and closer, but identity ever eludes us, so long as the garments remain. This sequence of vibratory actions is often seen in nature. A flame is a center of vibratory activity in ether, named by us heat. These vibrations or heat waves throw the surrounding ether into waves like unto themselves, and these throw the ether in a piece of iron laying near into similar waves, and its particles vibrate under their impulse, and so the iron becomes hot and a source of heat in its turn. So does a series of vibrations pass from one mind to another, and all beings are interlinked by this network of consciousness. So again, in physical nature, we mark off different ranges of vibrations by different names, calling one set light, another heat, another electricity, another sound, and so on. Yet all are of the same nature, all are modes of motion in ether, though they differ in rates of velocity and in the character of the waves. Thoughts, desires, and actions, the active manifestation and matter of knowledge, will and energy are all the same nature, that is, are all made up of vibration, but differ in their phenomena because of the different character of the vibrations. There is a series of vibrations in a particular kind of matter and with a certain character, and these we call thought vibrations. Another series is spoken of as desire vibrations, another series as action vibrations. These names are descriptive of certain facts in nature. There's a certain kind of ether thrown into vibration, and its vibration affects our eyes. We call the motion light. There's another far subtle ether thrown into vibrations, which are perceived, are responded to by the mind, and we call that motion thought. We are surrounded by matter of different densities, and we name the motion in it as they affect ourselves. They are answered by different organs of our gross or subtle bodies. We name light certain motions affecting the eye. We name thought certain motions affecting another organ, the mind. Seeing occurs when the light ether is thrown into waves from an object to our eye. Thinking occurs when the thought ether is thrown into waves between an object and our mind. The one is not more nor less mysterious than the other. In dealing with the mind, we shall see that the modifications in the arrangement of its materials are caused by the impact of thought waves, and that in concrete thinking we experience over again the original impacts from without. The knower finds his activity in these vibrations, and all to which they can answer, that is, all that they can reproduce, is knowledge. The thought is a reproduction within the mind of the knower, of that which is not the knower, is not the self. It is a picture caused by a combination of wave motions, an image quite literally. A part of the not self vibrates, and as the knower vibrates in answer, that part becomes the known. The matter quivering between them makes knowing possible by putting them into touch with each other. Thus is the chain of knower, known and knowing established and maintained. And that was the end of this chapter. Now, you, if you're still listening, might have no idea what you were just listening to in general. These are some heavy descriptions. It seems to be on the same level as Thomas Treward. There have been many authors about metaphysical teachings that wrote books, and sometimes it's really hard to follow them because they use so many different terms that are not really that common in general. All these theories about energy and vibrations, etc. But if we take the time to really think them through for ourselves, we might gain some insights about this mysterious thing called life and the power of thought. So I will go on with this book. For those of you that are interested in hearing more about it, we'll go through it together, and maybe we can learn something even greater that's hidden in these pages. Now, if you're new to this channel, consider subscribing to receive inspirational videos on a regular basis. And with that being said, dear viewer, never forget that we are the dreamers.